Hello, Archie Dunlop here with Talking Astrology with Archie. And in this video, I want to look at the week starting on Monday, September the 15th, 2025. I will start off by doing a preview of the main events astrologically of the week, and then I will do an I Ching reading for the week, and this reading will have 4 sections, as usual: general section, then money, then career, and finally relationships. And with this I Ching reading, remember, you don't have to watch it if you don't want to, and this reading only applies to those who watch the I Ching section of this video. So let's start off with the astrology. So here is the chart for today, and don't forget to like and subscribe if appropriate. So the week starts with the tail end of a lunar cycle. Remember, we had a new moon on August the 23rd, and over the weekend was the last quarter. So it's that final run up to the new moon, because there's a new moon sort of at the end of this week. In fact, it's a new moon eclipse, and so that is something that we really should be thinking about. Maybe that's the real finale of the week. But as far as how the week starts off, on Monday we have a biquintile between Mars and Uranus. So Mars at 25 Libra, making a biquintile to Uranus at about sort of 1 Gemini. So biquintile is an aspect which is about our willpower, what we are trying to achieve, what we're trying to put into action. But first, we might have to think about it. Some of us might want to have a dramatic impact, and we might be wondering, how is this possible? Perhaps this has to be planned. It may not be very spontaneous, and we have to sort of go through the preparations, ask ourselves, who are we dealing with? What is our situation like? If we wanted to create a bit of a shock, what would we have to say? What would we have to do? Now, I know that sounds very contrived, but because it's a biquintile, it may, in certain cases, be the right thing to do. Things perhaps need to be shaken up. And so, do bear that in mind at the beginning of the week. And also at the beginning of the week, sort of Monday, Tuesday, we have aspects involving Mercury, Venus, and Mars. So if you look at the chart, you can see that Mercury is in Virgo, and it's making semi-sextile aspects to Mars and Venus at the same time as Venus being sextile Mars. So, Venus sextile Mars, I've already talked about it, and Venus sextile Mars, I think, is quite a fortunate aspect. Venus and Mars are the 2 planets of attraction. Venus, planet of female sexuality; Mars, planet of male sexuality. You put them together as a sextile, and you could say they hit it off to some extent. And with Venus sextile Mars, it's a great time for being charming and charismatic and for being attractive. There are many ways of being attractive, and perhaps Venus and that Venus-Mars sextile can help. And then those 2 semi-sextiles, Mercury making a semi-sextile to both. Well, what's going on is that Mercury is on the Venus-Mars midpoint, and so with Venus on the Venus-Mars midpoint, with Venus and Mars being in sextile, that says quite a lot about what one says and how the power of one's words can be attractive. And by choosing the right words, we can get people's attention. So if you are in the business of pushing your personality forward, and you want to get noticed and you want people to love you, then maybe Mercury on the Venus-Mars midpoint can work very well, and it can be persuasive and it can be charming. So that's good. But you do have to look at it from the other point of view. It might be that other people are charming and persuasive and attractive, and that might mean that you have to be careful. Some people can be very persuasive, but overall, I think if you're aware of that Venus-Mars sextile with Mercury on the midpoint, I think that you can use it. Perhaps use it to get your way. And later in the week, on the 17th, there is an opposition between Mercury and Saturn. So Mercury, late Virgo, making an opposition to Saturn in late Pisces. Mercury opposition Saturn, isn't a bundle of laughs. I mean, if we think about what it might mean, well, Mercury can be about the mind. And so if Mercury is opposition Saturn, there might be things we just get down about. We might potentially see things in the worst possible light. So there's a neutral input. We could look at it in a positive light, but we probably won't. And so if sort of midweek, Wednesday in particular, you find yourself feeling a bit down and it all seems a bit hopeless, then regard it as being a passing phase. And it's certainly nothing much that you have to worry about. I mean, on a personal level, Mercury opposition Saturn is important, for other reasons, because Wednesday, Thursday, you've got Mercury opposition Saturn, then Mercury opposition Neptune. We've got a Saturn-Neptune conjunction in the sky, and so with Mercury hitting those two planets, that is important, especially as Mercury is opposition the Aries point. Yes, on Thursday, Mercury moves into Libra, so that is a big change. It's not just that Mercury is moving from one sign to another. It is that Mercury is opposition the Aries point. And so on a positive note, you could say, well, that's a great time to be communicating and to be listening. But opposition, the Saturn-Neptune conjunction, I'm thinking that maybe Mercury is going to be more of a trigger. We shouldn't necessarily think about it as being Mercury, as in the attributes of Mercury. It's more about the focus on Saturn and Neptune, these two planets and their conjunction, because the conjunction is on either side of the Aries point. Neptune in very early Aries, Saturn in very, very late Pisces, and they're on the Aries point. So I think that is something that we do need to think about. And all things being equal, I'd probably say that Mercury, opposition Saturn, opposition Neptune, is not a fortunate aspect, and there just may be things going on that could be quite worrying. I mean, again, it's not on such a big issue on an individual level, but it does relate to the collective, and we should sort of carefully observe what people are thinking, what people are saying, and there just may be a feeling of gloom around us. And then we move to the weekend, and things really are happening. We do have on Sunday a partial eclipse, and it's a partial new moon eclipse, and that means the sun is conjunct the moon in the last degree of Virgo, at the same time as the sun being opposition Saturn. So new moon, opposition Saturn, last degree of Virgo. The new moon is in the last degree of Virgo. Saturn is in the last degree of Pisces, and it's lined up with the Aries-Libra axis. So, because it's just before the equinox. So, sort of Monday, I think it's Monday the 22nd, is it? I think that's right. Monday the 22nd is the equinox. I've got that right. So Monday September the 22nd. Yeah, the sun goes into Libra, and that is the time when the light and night and day are of equal length, and I do think that is a really major event. And I mean, I'm not going to go into detail here, but when the time comes, the end of next week, I will be really looking at what is happening, because I do think it's a big deal. So looking at the week overall, I do think that there really is a lot going on. I don't think that it's necessarily going to be a quiet week. Now, thinking about the previous week, I mean, on paper, there wasn't so much going on last week, but it was an incredibly eventful and tragic week. There were so many things going on, and it wasn't just about Charlie Kirk getting assassinated. I mean, I think part of that was connected with the full moon eclipse. I mean, that seemed to really be quite dramatic. I also think it was connected with Saturn being in the last degree of Pisces. And I've been thinking about that quite a lot, particularly with the assassination of Charlie Kirk. And when I do my next video, my video for Monday, I mean, I'll be looking at Charlie Kirk again. I'll be looking at the horoscope of the man who has been held in custody on suspicion of killing him, and also I want to just revisit some of the aspects going on. In particular, that Uranus sextile Neptune. It's still with us, that Uranus sextile Neptune. I think we've perhaps underestimated that aspect. There's a lot to talk about next week. But now let me turn to the I Ching. So I'm going to do my I Ching reading for the week. I must emphasize, you don't have to watch. If you don't want your I Ching done, then you don't have to have it done. This only applies to those watching the I Ching section of the video. So this reading is in 4 parts, 4 sections: general, then money, then career, and then relationships. So I asked the question, what is the week starting on Monday, September the 15th, going to be like for those watching the I Ching section of this video? And the first hexagram I got was hexagram number 26, the taming power of the great. Now, this hexagram doesn't move. There are no moving lines. And because there are no moving lines, this might indicate that there is a sort of a lack of action. There might be big ideas, we might be ready to do something, but we just can't see it through. And maybe that's because it's the last week of the lunar cycle. We're sort of ready for the new moon eclipse on Sunday, but we're not all the way there. And at the same time, there's just there are things going on, but are we ready to participate? And we just might not be. And you think about the taming power of the great, and what does it actually mean? So the great may be us. It's perhaps being a bit sort of flattering there. We are the great. We have a lot of energy, a lot of force, and perhaps you can kind of regard it like there's a wild animal, a lot of power, but now is not the time. And so that energy which we can perhaps feel, we do need to hold back, and we need to show some restraint. And this restraint can take a number of forms. I mean, it could be that we have to accept restraint from some outside force. So it might be our family, or if we're working, whatever's going on at work, we might have things we want to do, but we just can't do it. It might be inadvisable. And we can also apply our own restraint. We can think back we can think back to the past, and that's one thing I Ching does do. It suggests that we look back. I think it talks about sayings of antiquity, I mean, I'm not saying you have to look up ancient texts. It might be things that you were told in the past that at the time you didn't take particularly seriously, but now, they seem relevant, and you want to make them part of your everyday life, and perhaps advice that was given to you years and years ago, maybe decades ago, it suddenly seems very relevant to the here and now, and the advice is to hold back, and we mustn't be in too much of a hurry. And there is a nuclear hexagram here, the hexagram underlying this hexagram. If we knock off the top and the bottom lines of this hexagram, and the underlying principle of the Taming Power of the Great is 54, which is the marrying maiden. And the symbol of a marrying maiden is a woman in a hurry, a young woman in a hurry to get married. And I don't know whether that's you, but I mean, it needn't just be about wanting to get married or be in a relationship. It's just in general someone with perhaps indecent haste. And one can have indecent haste over many different things. Really, you'd like to get something done. You'd like to sign on a dotted line. You'd like to get it all sorted out. 54, the marrying maiden. But you have to look at the overall hexagram, the taming power of the great. And so we're being told that perhaps with the taming power of the great, there's something we want to do. There's something we want to get it done. We want to become part of something. We want things to be done and dusted. We want things to be resolved. Perhaps we want security, and we don't. Many things we want to do, but now is not the right time, and we somehow need to show some restraint. But in showing that restraint, we are acknowledging our own power. I mean, it's not that we're powerless. Yeah, sure, we've got power, but now is perhaps not the right time to be showing that power. And looking at things from the viewpoint of money, you could say that it's a similar picture. We have ideas about money and what we'd like to do with money, or perhaps we have ideas about how we can make money. We might be impatient. Let's just do something. I mean, it could be even that we want to spend some money. I mean, why not? I mean, if you see something you want to buy, just go for it. But if you're talking about large purchases in particular, this may not be such a good thing. And also don't forget we've got no moving lines here. So we might have all sorts of ideas about money, whether it's buying things, saving up, or making more money, all sorts of ideas. But the question is, are they going to go anywhere? Probably not. And that might mean that if we've been planning on doing something which is financially related, maybe we just left it too late now. But the moment has gone. At least right now, in a week's time, that could be different, and it may not just be about us and our impulses. Yeah, we've certainly got the impulse to do something which has financial consequences, but I don't think we're going to be able to see it through, or rather, it would be unwise to see it through. And additionally, this might say something about other people and the people we come across. And when we think about the marrying maiden, that might be someone who is very keen when it comes to money. I mean, they may be very keen to get us to give them money or to sign a contract, or they're trying to sell us something. Remembering at the beginning of a week, we've got a Venus sextile Mars with Mercury on the midpoint. That can be someone who is very persuasive. That they might tell us that we should be spending money, and we might almost give in to them. Or it could be, a cold call on the phone. I mean, you listen to someone and you take the hook, and they try and persuade you to do something or to give away some information, and it all seems very straightforward. But if you do give anything away, if you do agree to anything of a financial nature, then I think you're going to regret it. But are you going to be that careless? Probably not, because as I said a bit earlier, there is the weight of the past, and we have been already told what to do or not to do. We know the rules. We've known the rules for a long time. We know what you can do. We know what you can't do. We know what's stupid. And so if we trust our own judgment, the judgment of the past, maybe even people from the past told us things about money, and if we can remember that advice and put it into practice, then I think that we should be okay. And then there is career and business. So in terms of career and business, we might have plans. There might be things we want to do. I mean, summer is over. Well, in the Northern Hemisphere, the summer's over. And so, now it's sort of back to normal, back to reality. So let's get going. Whatever you've been working on over summer, you've been planning over summer, or I suppose that'd be winter if you were in the Southern Hemisphere. But, whatever you've been thinking about, now's the time to make it happen, to do it, or at least that's your first thought. But I don't think that's the best approach. I think that the taming power of a great, it is about being tamed, having all this energy, all these things that you could do, and you want to do them now, but now it's not really the right time. And I do understand, though, that you're in a hurry, remembering that the nuclear hexagram is, hexagram 54, the marrying maiden. Or maybe if you're not in a hurry, someone else is in a hurry. They want you to do something. They want you to agree to something. They want you to make a commitment that perhaps relates to your work. Or, if you've got your own business, you might want to expand or try to get some new business or some new work. But, the general advice, is to hold firm and not to use your power. Yeah, you have power. You have a great understanding of, whatever your area of expertise is, and understanding can bring strength, but it's not a time to be, moving into new territory. And, then there is, relationships, and with, 26, the taming power of a great, well, don't expect too much. I mean, you might, want to make the most of other people. You might perhaps, want to get involved in a relationship or get to know someone, even closer. So that is a possibility. But, this is a locked hexagram. There are no moving lines. And, the advice here is really not to do anything, not to give too much away. And there is time. There's time to get to know people, and it can take a long time before you really know someone to the extent where you can actually trust them. And also with this hexagram, we have to think about the nuclear hexagram. The nuclear hexagram is the marrying maiden, and the marrying maiden is a hexagram which is very much about relationships. It's about someone who is just in a hurry. They're in a hurry to move forward with a relationship. Now, that might be you who's in a hurry, or it might be someone else, a partner, a potential partner is in a hurry to make things happen. But it's a hurry which is not really very appropriate. It's the wrong time. And the overall message here is you do need to show some discipline and restraint, and to just accept that now is not a time for big changes. And that applies both ways. It's big changes in terms of getting closer to someone, but also big changes in terms of moving further away from them. It should be perhaps a week of just contemplation. Remember, it's the end of a lunar cycle, and perhaps because it's the end of a lunar cycle, you need to wait. Perhaps it's not a time for making changes in relationships, and so just accept that, and do show some restraint, and then okay, there might not be much excitement, but then on the other hand, you won't come to much harm. So those are my thoughts on this week, on the week starting on Monday, September the 15th. I hope you have a good week, and thank you very much for watching this video. If you enjoyed this video, I'd be very grateful if you were to like it. If you're not subscribed, super grateful if you were to subscribe. If you want to buy me a coffee, there's a link in the description, and I will talk to you again very soon.